the distributive property. So this is a property that deals with multiplication and parentheses, and we're going to be using this within solving equations. So we're going to see a set of parentheses, and there may be some adding or subtracting or inside the parentheses, and outside the parentheses in the front, we'll be multiplying the parentheses by something. So what we want to do is, just like our order of operations, we want to deal with parentheses, our PEMDAS. So we want to get rid of the parentheses by doing what they're asking us to do. So here's the steps we're going to follow, which deal with the distributive property. So we're going to simplify inside the parentheses. So we're going to look inside the parentheses and see if there's any math that we can do, adding or subtracting, combining like terms. We're going to multiply each inside term by the term on the outside of the parentheses. So whatever is being multiplied at the front of those parentheses, it's usually at the front. Every now and then they like to throw it at the back, but it's in the front most of the time. We're going to simplify that, and that will get rid of the parentheses for us. I'm also going to suggest that if your integer skills are not super strong, you might want to change subtracting to adding the opposite first. So go through, and anytime you see subtracting, automatically change it to adding the opposite. That'll help you with some of the sign changes as we go. All right, so let's do a couple problems. So here we have -5, and then in parentheses x plus 10. So inside the parentheses I have x plus 10. Those are not like terms, so I cannot combine them together. We have a variable here that doesn't have a coefficient, that number in front of it. So we know that that's got a 1 in front of it automatically. We just know that. That's kind of a given. So to distribute this -5 that's being multiplied by everything, we're going to multiply that by everything in the parentheses. We're going to do -5 times 1x, which is -5x. And we're going to do -5 times positive 10, which is -50. Now we could also think of this as a negative times a positive and write that as a -50. Either one of these are perfectly fine. Remember, we talked about changing subtracting to adding the opposite, so they're the same. So I'll take them either way. They mean the same thing. They represent the same thing. Sometimes this works better in given situations. Sometimes the addition works better. So depending on the situation, you use whichever one seems to make most sense to you. Next problem. We've got 19. Now this is a bracket. It works the same as a parenthesis. It just has it's kind of more square to it. Sometimes we use it to tell the difference if we've got parentheses and brackets in the same equation. So, and then in our bracket, 7 plus w plus -2. We're going to look inside first and say, oh right, 7 and -2 are like terms, so I can combine them together to get 5. So here's my simplified version of what's inside, 5 plus w. Nothing else I can do in there. So we're going to distribute this 19. 19 times 5 is 95, and 19 times w, 19 times w, 19w. Again, remembering that's a 1 in front there, and then we're just multiplying each of these by those terms inside. So I end up with 95 plus 19w. Done. All right, last one for this section. We've got -12, and then in parentheses x plus 2y minus 3z. Again, remember this x has a 1 in front of it. Any variable always has a coefficient. If we didn't write it, it's because it's a 1. So we're going to look inside, and this is an x and a y and a z, so they're not like terms, so I can't combine them. So I'm just going to have to deal with my distributive. So -12 times 1x is -12x. -12 times 2y is, again, I could write this as -24y, or I could write it as plus a -24y. They're equivalent expressions. Either one is fine. And then I have -12 times -3z. So a negative times a negative gives me a positive 36z. Notice too that we've got this negative sign in front of the 12, so this is the whole term. We always look at the sign that's in front of that number to see what it is. There's a negative there, so I need to deal with that negative. All right, next, what do we have? 2 more? Oh, we've got 4 more. Oh my goodness, what did I give you? All right, let's try a few more and see if we've got this. So I've got 5, and then in parentheses, a plus 4. Again, I can't do anything with the a plus 4. They're not like terms. So 5 times a is 5a. 5 times 4 is 20. Done. Next one, -2, and in my parentheses, I have 2x plus 1. So 2x plus 1, they're not like terms. I can't combine them together, so we'll just distribute that -2. Again, notice that that negative sign that's in front of the 2 goes with the 2. So if there's a sign in front of what we're multiplying with a distributive property, it has to go with that number. So it's -2 times 2x is -4x, negative times positive, and a negative times positive. -2 times a positive 1 gives us negative 2. Done. All right, last two. I've got 3, and then in parentheses, 2x minus 6 plus 3. So again, I'm going to look inside my parentheses, and I notice here that I have negative 6. Again, this negative sign goes with the 6. So it's negative 6 plus 3. So it's not 6 plus 3. It's negative 6 plus 3. So negative 6 plus 3 gives me negative 3. So I've cleaned up what's inside here to make it a little simpler to understand. Now I can distribute this 3. 3 times 2x is 6x. 3 times negative 3 or minus 3 is minus 9. So I have 6x minus 9. Now I could have, if this gives you kind of a headache here, if you want to change this to 2x plus a negative 3, that works just fine. Go right ahead and do that if that makes sense for you. And the last one we've got here, negative 4 and then in parentheses 3y minus 4 plus y. So again, I'm going to look inside my parentheses and I see that I have two terms with a y. So I'm going to combine them together. 3y and then this is plus 1y. So I add those together and I get 4y. So 4y minus 4, that minus goes with the 4. Next I'm going to distribute here. So negative 4 times 4y is negative 16y. And a negative times this negative 4. Now again, if there's a lot of negatives going on here, you're more than welcome to change this to 4y plus a negative 4. So minus 4 minus positive 4 is the same thing as plus a negative 4. And then that would give you a negative times a negative, which still comes out with that positive. So I end up with negative 16y plus 16. So our distributive property, we have a set of parentheses. We want to check inside the parentheses and combine like terms first. And then whatever number's in front of those parentheses that's being multiplied by the parentheses, we want to distribute that times every term inside the parentheses.